This is more than just a document. It is a vision for our future, a roadmap for creativity, and a testament to the passion and dedication to this incredible community to live creatively in Plano.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve Stoller.
And I'm Shauna Haley, and this is Inside Plano.
I'm Michelle Hawkins with the City of Plano. It is a privilege to stand before you to celebrate this milestone, the draft of our city's first ever cultural arts plan. This is more than just a document. It is a vision for our future, a roadmap for creativity, and a testament to the passion and dedication to this incredible community to live creatively in Plano. For over a year, we've gathered invaluable feedback and worked collaboratively to craft a plan that reflects our entire community. I'd like to acknowledge our mayor, city council, city manager, and deputy city managers for their leadership and continued support of the arts. Several are in attendance tonight. Mayor John Munns, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Julie Homer, Councilperson Rick Horn, City Manager Mark Israelson, and Deputy City Manager LaShawn Ross. I also extend a heartfelt thank you to our Cultural Arts Committee and our Arts Plan Advisory Board, whose expertise and dedication have been instrumental in shaping this plan. Please stand to be recognized. To our artists, arts organizations, and the countless community members who dedicated their time, voices, and ideas, thank you. I'm now going to hand this over to Martin, David, and Linda with the Cultural Planning Group to walk you through the plan. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Flynn with Cultural Planning Group, and I feel very much in the spotlight here. Thank you for coming. This is a really exciting time for us, unveiling the plan for you. And the name of it is Live Creatively in Plano. And we are very proud to say that artwork and the tagline was developed by a local artist here, Amber Lee. So first, let's get an idea of who's in the room. We're just gonna raise your hand. Individual artists and creatives. Great. Representing an arts organization, representing another creative business or business in Plano or surrounding area. Awesome. City staff and elected leadership. And then everyone else is just really interested to be here to watch the unveiling, right? Okay, so I can't see it. I am going to, oh, it's right in front of me. I'm going to go through the planning process, talk a little bit about the engagement that we did in the city, and then I'm going to hand it over to my partner Martin and David to talk a little bit about the themes, and then the goals and strategies for the plan. So this is part of our engagement that was done at Legacy West, and I want to give a shout out to Willow Bend. I know Krista is here, and Legacy West, and all of the other businesses that really worked with us and supported this engagement effort. We typically don't see that in our communities, that retail businesses open their doors and want to be involved. So we really do shout out a thank you. So this is the boring slide that has all of the research on it that I'm not going to go through, but what this just says is we did our homework. So we did a lot of research quantitatively. We did a lot of engagement. We looked at a lot of previous plans and future plans for the city because we want to make sure that everything is aligned. Recognize this? Many of you were there. The first Arts Forum at the beginning of the process. So we did comprehensive stakeholder and community engagement. You can see many of the groups that we reached. The community engagement did include discussion groups, artist-led workshops by Amber and our artist on the team, Rosario Sai, who is not here tonight, pop-ups throughout the city, And we also did a statistically valid survey, meaning that that is demographically representative of the residents of Plano. But we also wanted to include an opportunity where everyone could participate. So we had an open community survey that was distributed at many of the engagement events. And comparing those results, they were very, very similar. So that was a positive outcome. Again, these are all the locations that we had pop-ups in the community, photos. It was really nice to see a lot of the youth engaged, a lot of parents, a lot of couples where the woman was dragging her boyfriend or her husband over to the table to paint some art, but then they didn't want to leave, so that was a positive. So now I'm going to hand it over to Martin Cohen to talk a little bit about what we learned.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, that light's right there in the face. Okay. I'm trying to read the slides down here in front of me while you're looking up there. All right, so let me start with some common themes, and then I'm going to get into some categories of how things began to coalesce in terms of what we heard, what we learned, and how the research began to roll up. The first thing here is an important one to look at, and we anticipate some questions over this, right? The first one says here that Plano is at a critical point in arts and cultural development. So the question is, what do we mean by that critical point? Well, there's several things that really point to what that means. The first is, this is the first master cultural plan for the city. That in and of itself is a critical moment, because it is representative and reflective of the community saying, you know, this is something that's important to us. We really need to be thoughtful. We need to go out and talk to the community. We need to understand what the priorities are of the residents, what people's vision are, what is the vision for arts, culture, and creative life here in the city. So we consider that to be a critical moment, because it's a decision to say we're going to invest in finding out, and that's what this process was all about. In addition to that, you know, and this is again common with that, and we see going with that reflective moment, is the growing support for cultural vibrancy in the community. This is a lot of what we heard, that part of the maturation of the city, that Plano's at a certain point in its life cycle, as it were, that the cultural life has risen to a point that it's really important to the resident, and much of it was about the kind of vibrancy that they would like to see happening. And part of that is that the Plano residents, you know, want to see a greater presence of arts in everyday life. And that has many ways that it manifests itself. And we'll talk more about that as we get into some of the, I'm going to skip to a couple slides here in a minute to talk more about that. And that we also see Plano's residents really are looking for the opportunity to increase their arts participation. They want to be involved, whether that's going to actually attend something, but also for personal participation, personal expression, opportunities for themselves to create, to participate, whatever that might mean. And probably one of the greatest themes is the bottom line here, which is probably not a surprise to any of you here, which is improved marketing communication. The common thing that we heard is, we don't know where to find the information, and gee, there's more going on here than we think we know about, but we never know how to learn about it. So that's something that we saw as very much a common theme across all of the engagement. So some of the categories, we're going to get into 3 or 4 here that we want to share with you. The first is just a reflection of the vibrancy of the community. Many residents really see Plano as having a level of vibrancy, but we also heard and saw in the survey and in discussion groups, what residents told us is they leave Plano to attend arts and culture. And there are a couple of reasons for that. You know, as you can see here, it says 89% of households have above average interest in the arts, but they find a lot of the content they're interested in participating in or attending is not happening here in Plano for them. So we see that, you know, we see that there's a concentration, as it says here in downtown. This is where the International Festival is. There's many other events that happen down here. There's obviously where we're sitting today in the Art Center across the street. So we know that there's a concentration, and so part of that is the fact that there's not a lot of geographic dispersion of opportunities to participate. But we also, reflective of that, on the other side, is the rich cultural heritage, the fact that there's actually a great deal that is emanating out of Plano. You know, that there's arts organizations here, they're anchored here, even if they're not doing their work here, and we know that from our conversations with many of you. But at the same time, there's also a lot of communities here that have cultural traditions, that heritage and traditions that are happening within Plano or right outside of Plano, and that's also part of what we saw as the cultural vibrancy. Another category is really thinking about the priorities. What did we hear people talked about in terms of arts and creative life and in creative economy too? So I'm going to be jumping around and not following these in any order while you're reading them. So I'm going to jump right, because I mentioned creative economy, to talk about affordable workspaces and creative incubators for individual artists. When we talk to those in the creative economy, they talked a great deal about the challenges around affordable space or the kinds of maker spaces or places that facilitate the creation of work. And we know that that's a challenge here. Part of that is that Plano's, traditionally you find those places when there's a lot of old light industrial space that can be converted, right? That happens. I live in the Philadelphia area, and so many of those spaces around the city are old adaptive reuse of those kinds of spaces, but that's not something that exists here in Plano. So other kinds of things, I'm going back to more towards the top of the list here, which is to talk about, people would like to see Plano as a community arts destination. And what does that really mean? One is places to participate, places to attend, places to be involved, but at the same time also to be recognized for the critical mass of artists and creatives that are actually working in this community, that is actually part of the identity of place. So destination, it says destination, but it's also about how we think of ourselves as a city and recognizing the fact that we have this critical mass of creatives working in our community. Going back to the second point here, which is really about, I talked earlier, that residents shared with us they're really looking for more varied and higher quality offerings in Plano, that they do have to go elsewhere, but they'd like to see more happening here. And part of that is paired with the fact that they'd like to have better access to information about local offerings. How do they actually connect to it? Events and activities that we heard about that they're looking for is across the age spectrum. For not only just families, but for young adults who are seeking something perhaps more adventurous and more challenging, and adults that are looking for more sophisticated and more in-depth kind of work that they see isn't quite available to them in their own city, and they have to go elsewhere. And as it says at the bottom here about opportunities for hands-on or participatory work. So moving on to that, we thinking about what bringing that up to what residents want to see more of, right? We hear that 86%, what we heard was 86%, and this was from the statistically valid survey. I just want to qualify that we know that they leave to attend arts and culture events and go elsewhere. But 32% of those, talk about it's due to better events being available outside. So while that's not the majority of those, we do see them being very clear that they're going elsewhere because of that. We see some interest around some expression of demographic differences among the residents, that they're looking for greater attention to cultural relevancy involving the kind of programming that's available to them. Again, some of that goes to the nature of who lives in Plano and the communities that are here, and these other issues that you see, barriers around language, cost, scheduling, and transportation. A couple more slides here, and then I'm going to turn it over to David. But quickly, long-term priorities. Again, this is from the statistically valid survey. What we saw first and foremost, the highest percentage, was really about wanting a go-to resource for finding out what's happening here. So I know many of you in here are arts organizations. This is a two-way street, by the way. Two-way street. So we know that in every community we need to hear about, every community wants to have a go-to place. That's not unusual. But we also find that arts organizations want somebody else to do it for them. And the thing that's underneath that all is it is a dual responsibility of how that responsibility is shared. Any site can only reflect what information they're given. So that's something that has to be a partnership in making those things happen when the time comes. So as you see here, we also heard that supporting local artists to stay in Plano was important to the community, to the residents. That developing more creative spaces still was a pretty strong, important element that we heard from the people in Plano. They recognize this. It's part of the nature of the community. And the fact that it's a relatively new city. And we also see pretty high percentages here of people wanting to enhancing and developing artists and creative events and opportunities for all. And lastly, increasing affordable spaces for artists and arts and cultural organizations to be anchored here. So these are all fairly exciting, and we'll talk about how that begins to roll up. Lastly, and again, this reflects many of you here. We've talked a lot about the residents more broadly, but we heard from all of you. And that's about establishing stronger district cultural identity. You want to maintain the connections across the region, but you want to have that stronger identity about being part of Plano. We heard from the nonprofit arts and cultural community about better coordination, about wanting to be better connected, and sharing the marketing initiatives we heard as part of that, but some of that rolls up to what we're also hearing from residents. The need for affordable workspace and affordable places to do your work. This is true for individual artists and for organizations. That was a consistent theme. And lastly, that arts funding is provided primarily by a limited universe of the city and a few private donors. We've heard very strong messages about frustration around the big corporate presence here and the headquarters are here, that the money's not staying home, it's going elsewhere. And we're very aware of that. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the solutions here in a minute. And lastly, the last thing I want to share with you is we asked the community, the public, in the Statistically Valid survey, and we also asked them this in the open survey, do they support public funding for the arts? Should the city be providing resources for arts and culture and creative in the government? And here's what you see. I'm sorry, I can't read those this small. I have to look down. But what we see is that the strongly support and somewhat support is 65% combined. You can read that better than I can. It's very small on my screen and it's very big up there. But that's a big number. 65% is a very strong number. We do this all over the country. One of the things that we can share from our perspective that it's very exciting to hear that the Plano residents are very supportive of the city supporting arts and culture. So how does that translate into art solutions and how we begin to put this into a plan? I'm going to hand this over to David.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see many of you again. So it's my happy task to share with you the draft goals and strategies of the plan. These are the recommendations. They're based on the sum total of the research and engagement we've just been walking through, and they amount to a way to meet the community's vision and priorities for arts and culture in their lives. And they're also a way to strengthen the arts community to be more sustainable and have better tools to fulfill your missions. So as some of you may have already read, the plan is organized into 3 goal areas. The first is the community. This is what we heard and learned from residents about their desires for their own cultural lives. The second is the creative community, what we heard from the arts and culture sector, and enabling you to fulfill your missions and forge a career as individual artists. The third goal is about city government, what role the city can take to support implementation of this vision and this plan. So let's take a minute to look at each goal and a few of the strategies attached to them. The community goal. The first strategy is about the kinds of arts programming the community desires and may be missing or less available in Plano. Martin talked about this. It's not a surprise to most of you in this room. In fact, you told us much of this, echoing what we learned in the surveys and in the market research. The public seeks a greater variety of more sophisticated programming, as well as programming intended for specific audience segments, like adults, older adults, younger adults, youth, families, things that they now leave Plano to find. The second strategy calls for coordinated and citywide marketing of the arts. This was one of the most common and pressing needs we heard throughout the planning process. It's also one reason people don't attend more in Plano, documented through the survey. They don't learn about things that interest them in a timely manner. 1.4 is about public art. The city used to have a formal public percent for art program, and although it does not currently have one, we learned from Michelle today that it was discontinued as a result of the Great Recession in 2008. Although the city doesn't have a formal public art program at this point in time, it's done several recent pilot public art projects, like the sculptures on 15th Street. But the community wants to see more public art, and not just permanent sculptures, but also temporary and interactive pieces, murals, and things like artist-designed utility boxes and crosswalks, things on city infrastructure. So public art overlaps with 1.5, which is about creative placemaking. People express a desire for more gathering places in the city, whether in malls, parks, downtown, or other places, some of which haven't been created yet. They often describe Plano as vanilla, a vanilla suburb, and desire a more interesting and intentionally designed, built environment. And there are lots of ways to activate and enliven existing spaces. That's okay, I'm skipping around. I would agree. We're just picking out some highlights, and you'll have the opportunity, all of you, to comment and highlight what's most important to you when we get to the discussion portion of tonight's Arts Forum. So moving on now to the creative community, this focuses on the needs of the arts sector and ways to better enable you and in your careers and your organizations to fulfill your mission. 2.1 is about the grants program and recommends changes to provide funding to a broader range of organizations and to create new funding categories, including funding for individual artists. 2.2 is essentially a cross-reference to the marketing program we just talked about. Marketing fits both in Goal 1 about community as well as in Goal 2 about the creative community. 2.3 acknowledges the essential role of Plano's individual artists. It calls for funding, professional development, work opportunities, and other ways to highlight and make use of artists living here in Plano. 2.5 through 2.7, stay with us, focus on facilities and spaces for the arts. We heard loud and clear the need for a range of cultural facilities and other spaces. These recommendations call for the city to develop or partner in the development of a number of facilities that would meet identified community needs. Specifics include a community cultural center. This was investigated specifically in a 2017 study, so it's an idea that's been around for a while. Also, gallery spaces, artists' live workspaces, and a directory of available spaces throughout the city. The third goal is about evolving the role of city government. 3.1 calls on the city to consolidate its current arts functions into an Office of Cultural Affairs, or maybe an Office of Creative Life. The plan calls for the city to do new things, and this will be more effective with internal coordination. And in fact, we were meeting with some of the senior staff this afternoon in the municipal building, and we were tallying up that the city actually spends maybe $3 million a year on arts and culture now. About half of that is through the grants program, the costs of operating this facility and the black box next door, the Red Tail, the special events that are funded and produced by the city. So there's a whole range of resources the city brings to bear on the arts. So consolidating and coordinating those in and of itself would be a plus. 3.2 recommends a general review and alignment of city policy to best serve the evolving needs of the community. This means reevaluating grants policies, facility use policies, and event permitting. It also means coordinating city arts and cultural activities across different departments like recreation and the libraries. 3.3 is about the Cultural Arts Commission, and we know that we have some commissioners here in the audience tonight. The commission now primarily focuses on the grants process. This recommendation envisions broadening the commission's scope to include advising City Council on all arts and cultural issues, a true cultural affairs commission. Now, this cultural plan was commissioned by the city at the urging of the arts community, and one important purpose of this plan is to define an appropriate role for city government moving forward. But cultural plans by nature involve partnerships. They can't be implemented without partnerships and the active participation of arts organizations, artists, creative businesses, and of course residents. And as an advisory group member reminded us this afternoon, businesses and corporations in the community. The plan details many opportunities for each sector to take a role in implementation of this plan and welcomes everyone's participation. Now, every plan raises expectations for more resources, more money for the arts, and questions about how to pay for implementation. So let's take a look at the funding options for this plan. So this is the nerd slide. For those of you who don't live and breathe municipal finance, stay with us. The city currently funds arts and culture primarily from from two of the top bullets here, the hotel occupancy tax, the tax that Martin and Linda and I are paying to stay in a hotel here in Plano, and also from general funds, the general revenues that the city collects from a variety of sources. They're the most flexible dollars the city has to spend. So these support the city's grants programs, special events, the cultural facilities, library and recreation programs, and more. And staff has also secured grant funding for the Downtown Arts District, for public art projects and other uses. So these are existing ways, are all invaluable ways to pay for arts and culture, and they should continue. There are additional ways, options for new revenues for the arts. If the city chooses to revive its Percent for Art program, this would generate additional monies for public art. If it explores art incentives or requirements for private real estate development, that would also generate new funds for public art or for arts spaces. Many cities form a nonprofit fundraising arm, a Friends of the Arts type foundation, to raise private dollars from the community to support compelling needs identified in a cultural plan. This is commonly done for parks and libraries, and we understand there are friends of organizations for both parks and libraries here in Plano. And this can be a very effective way to bring in new dollars to the arts community. Plano, as you know, also participates in capital bond issues about every 5 years, and this is one way to help finance cultural facilities projects and other capital costs. Now, I think that is it for our walkthrough. Yeah, so let's take, before we break into small groups for discussion, let's take a few questions and have some comments from the audience. Yeah. Who'd like to offer a comment or ask a question? All ideas are welcome.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Judith Pafford with the Plano Art Association. I'm going to go way back to the beginning slides where we said 89% of Plano residents have above average interest in the arts. And then we also said that 65% either had a strongly held or somewhat a positive perception that government should fund the arts.
Yes.
But the actual voting of the majority of the people in the city does not reflect that. I'm going back to the vote for the Performing Arts Center. Mm-hmm. And we now have another potential in the next bond vote. And being separated out again, I don't feel comfortable that we're going to get another positive vote, even though we see these positive feelings. So to me, the question is, what can we do to be more political and that's not a nasty word, be more political to make sure the people of the city know when they go in to vote what that bond will give them as a ability to exercise their interest in the arts.
That's an excellent point and very, I think, very politically insightful. So let me offer a couple of responses. First, what can you do? I mean, to jump to the end of tonight's session, we plan to exhort all of you, to invite you, to encourage you to advocate not only for adoption of this plan, but for its implementation. And when budget items come up to City Council, to express your support, reinforcing the idea that it's not just artists and arts organizations asking for City Council action, but rather it now has the imprimatur of the community and of this extensive community process. Okay, so that's one thing. What can we do? But also, you're absolutely right that the survey that we did was not testing, it was not an opinion, a poll testing a specific proposal for arts funding. It's a general attitude. So anytime a capital facilities project, which is going to go to the voters in Frisco sometime in the next year, or other arts proposal that needs voter approval comes up, it will need its own dedicated advocacy program to turn that latent positive attitude into an actual vote. And as one advisory group member also educated us today, there's a portion of Plano's population who are not residents, not legal residents with the, who are able to vote in elections. So there's also that. It's who's the electorate we're trying to convince. Other questions or comments? Okay, we've got one here and one here.
Hi there. I'm just curious, you had mentioned a percentage of people that were going outside of Plano to seek arts and culture. Was there any data around what they were seeking that was outside of Plano?
We didn't get, I'm sorry.
Just in terms of if it's adult oriented, is it just, I'm just curious if you can elaborate or if we even got that data.
It's a great question. We didn't go that deep in the statistically valid survey, but as some of you may know, we did a market study, and in the 5 billion pages of attachment to the plan, there's, for those of you with arts organizations, there's wonderful meat, substance to be had there in that market study. But coming back to your question, we also did a series of audience focus groups to probe a little bit deeper in what the market study told us. And I think the answer to your question is they go for everything.
Okay.
This is a community that will go see opera, they want to see comedy, they want to see tribute bands, they want to see children's theater. There's an appetite and a market for everything. So I don't think it's a matter of having to entirely retool what you offer the community. I think it's a different task.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for that great question.
Hello, I'm Raj. As we've met before,
Yes,
you know
hi,
me.
Raj.
I was privileged to serve on the committee, and as I was mingling this evening, it was pointed out, and I feel awful that I was remiss in my job on the committee, in spite of being a trustee of Collin College, that Collin College was not represented in the report. And I'm not sure if you guys had any interactions. I certainly didn't bring it up in my role as trustee. Plano and the arts portion of Collin College is just one of the many things we deal with, and it's frankly not one of the top things we're working on the next bachelor's degree program, or the next health science building that's coming up, or the tax rate or something like that. And the Collin College Plano campus has, as we all know, an active arts community, arts educators. We teach students in arts, we give degrees in arts, and somehow I think we need to make that connection if it hasn't already been made. Okay. All right, so
But Raj,
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Please
No,
finish.
go ahead, I'm done, I'm done,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you for that, bringing up that excellent point. And there, in every cultural planning process, people are busy, right? we're just finishing our comparison study of other cities because it was hard to get the cities to respond, right? I mean, we all experience that in our own lives. But that doesn't negate the fact that College should absolutely be a partner in implementation, and it's giving me a reminder that we should specifically add that into the roles and opportunities section of the plan.
Good evening, I'm Krista Medlock. And this is more of just maybe something for us all to consider as we move forward is we all touch to some degree the arts and culture, right? But the vast majority, they think, yeah, they get a survey and they say, yes, we'd like more arts. Yes, we'd like comedy. Yes, we'd like, but do they really understand the depth and scope of the touch of the arts for the city? You know, I think there needs to be maybe an opportunity for public awareness campaign to draw the public in, because I really don't think they truly understand the impact of this on the greater good. Okay, so I'm just for us to think about that, a public awareness campaign.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you said your name is Krista? Krista, yeah. Again, I really appreciate how thoughtful, how insightful your comments and questions are tonight. So one of the recommendations we talked about in the first goal area about the community was better citywide arts marketing, right? People told us they're not finding out, it's not as easy as they would like to find out about what they want to do. And so we agree, and we want to see a better citywide system, and the city is interested in taking a lead role in acting on that as one of the initial implementation steps of the plan. But I think attached to that, Krista, to your point, it doesn't have to be only about marketing an event or a class. It can have a broader capacity to raise the visibility of the arts in the community and of the role and value that arts play, the many roles and value that arts have in Plano. If I am reflecting your, yeah.
Oh.
There's one gentleman in the back here, and yeah. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Connor Chaddock. In your earlier slides, were there age brackets that stood out as, like in your 65%, was there age definitive groups in there? And then the next question, from all of these programs you all have put together, have you seen anything that designates or suggests or gives us information to say, you know, open these up to ideas like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday scheduling or something to draw people into the downtown area or the marketplace, or to get them out of their homes looking for other things, because sometimes weekends they have kids that they have to deal with. So when can I take that opportunity as an adult is where I'm heading with that.
Well, those are two questions. So let me just answer the second question and ask Linda if she would answer the first. But I think the answer to the second question is we did market research, but not a marketing plan. But I love your idea of changing up the days of the week and times of day that different events are offered, because I think that fits with the spectrum, the variety of interest, as distinguished from how much people want to do, the different ways they would like to do it.
Yes, and remember that boring slide with all the research on it? Yes, we did the statistically valid survey. We did many crosstabs to look at significant results by age, background, etc. So you are welcome to that survey report. Anyone is. I would encourage people to look at it. I would encourage people to look at the market study, especially arts organizations, because it really will tell you what people are looking for and what even the regional draw will be for the organizations. I don't have all of the data in my head right now, I'm sorry, but we can get you that report.
Let's take one more and then we'll break into small groups for just a brief discussion.
Thank you. So my name is Jose Angel Hernandez. I'm a guest. I'm not a resident of Plano, so up front. But I am a member of the Plano Art Association. I'm a visual artist and I'm a curator. I love study. I come from corporate America and I love all this research and whatnot. I'm very realistic and I see the triangle: government, community, the artist community. I'll start with the artist community. The artist community is as diverse as you could ever imagine. But for years, it's been marginalized by the conversations been geared towards fine art. Historically, throughout the world, art has always played a role in contemporary issues. But going back to fine arts, within the community, there are artists that do craft, and they consider that art. Some create art that is $10. Some create art that's $10,000. So this is a spectrum from an artist's point of view. Well, guess what? The community is exactly the same. You have the very wealthy that love the fine arts, and then within the community, and this is all documented in the presentation, it is very diverse. So here's my statement. I do a lot of research, and some of the research that revealed that 2025 is going to be a year in the arts that's going to be controlled by trends of bold colors, crazy landscapes, and art that is related to activism. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern in the world, not just in the United States. So here, and I'll go straight to the straight question. What are the possibilities of incorporating, I'm gonna call it manifesto art. I'm talking about people talking within subcultures, the queer community, you know, the homeless community, where they could, and I'm not saying the homeless are gonna be the artists, but those kind of topics that address social issues. Is the city open to that type of art? Which is similar, why are people going elsewhere for art? Which I kind of piggyback on that question. Thank you.
So, Jose, you sent us an email, correct? It was a beautiful email, thoughtful, beautifully written. So I just want to acknowledge that to begin with. Thank you for coming tonight and speaking up. So I would say, yes, we would certainly recommend that kind of diversity of artistic expression that you're describing should be eligible for funding. City Council may shoot me, but no, I'm teasing. But no, that's part of what supporting the arts and the arts community mean, is accepting different points of view, sometimes things that are challenging.
So I may add a really quick comment. I know we talk a lot about marketing and communication plans and so forth with the city. And I think as I'm listening to the comments, one of the things that might be helpful is if somewhere here we had personas for the various roles people play within the city. So if you're an individual, if you're a parent, if you're an arts organization, if you're a college, if you're government, if you're whatnot, what can that persona do to engage with the city, with the plan, and with the arts in the city? I think pulling that out in the plan might be helpful, because I think to your comment, Krista, people don't really understand, because don't really know, not everybody knows how they can engage. So how can I, this is my role, how can I engage is a key thing, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Raj. So let's move into small group discussion. I am going to advance the slides here. Here are a series of prompts. So you don't have to answer every question, but just some things to think about. We're going to organize you into, what do you think, four groups. And we're going to give you 15 minutes to talk as a peer group. We ask that each small group, choose a note taker. Someone who can take some notes. Do it on your phone, use AI, you can do it by memory. But then we would like to reassemble after 15 minutes of conversation and get report backs from each of your groups, and that will lead us to the close of this evening's session. So we have 4 groups to report. Who'd like to start? Just give us the highlights of your conversation.
Hey. Hello, I am Misty Hoyt, and here is, we kind of bounced all over the place, but here's where we really landed, I feel like. That we need to start internally with an internal person and the Creative Living Office, which could include the Cultural Arts Commission, and so they're not just judging grants or scoring grant applicants, but also like boots on the ground, like what do our arts organizations need? What do our artists need? Being the voice for the artists and the arts community. And then, you know, the main person would be the liaison to city council and the marketing arm. And so we need to start internally first to build that out to bigger and better things.
Was there more, Misty?
Well, I just kind of wanted to say selfishly a little bit to the gentleman in the back. I can't speak for city council, but what I do know, having served on the Cultural Arts Commission, is there is a lot of those, I don't know how to describe it, but you said bolder colors, things that maybe some people might not want to hear. We already have that in our arts organizations that the city spends $1.5 million a year on. So I don't think that your artists are going to scare them away from giving money and time and effort to the arts community.
Thank you, Misty. Steve is our next speaker.
I'm going to piggyback on some of what Misty said. I think that, well, first of all, we don't see turning this over to city staff at this point. There's not enough of a plan here. We need to develop an implementation program. We need to go through what you have found, and it needs to be, as Misty suggested, you know, a group of citizens. Our city does well when it appoints commissions and boards and councils to do stuff and brings in people from various different viewpoints to get to the point where we can actually present something to city staff or work with city staff to present something to council. So that's one thing. And we feel that way because this is a great introduction for us to start with, but there is no real implementation plan here. There isn't something that says to the staff, okay, here's what you have to work with, you know, let's go do this. We're not there yet. So that's the thing that's missing, is we don't really have that part of the program ready to turn over. And I think that there are citizens, business representatives, all those things that you talked about that are stakeholders in this that need to get together through representation and take the next step.
Thank you. Was there anything else from that group? Okay, how about the third group?
Well, I'm not as articulate as those two. I am more of a note taker that got initiated to share, but I will share from our notes. We also were saying, like, where do we go from here and how do we get to a plan and who are the people that get us to those plans? That's a big question, like, where is this going? If we are doing it through the government and the city government, then we need them to be more dedicated for the arts to actually flourish here, if that's the purpose. For example, if we are wanting their involvement, then they advocate for us to corporate. So when a corporation comes into town, then they're advocating for an arts organization funding as part of their agreements and discussions. That we are also, like, if the three things that we're focused, we think we need more facilities, if we want to be clear to the community that we are a central place for the arts, we have to have the facilities to actually have the arts here. We need marketing and public awareness for the arts in the city for them to be aware. If you don't know about it, you don't go to it. I mean, that's just obvious, of course. And then, let's see if I hit everything that they've said. Just a side point, we were talking about the priority for space, but then we said, like, ideas of the murals that you mentioned is a wonderful starting point to bring awareness of the arts to the city, even especially if some of those murals were focused on the arts that already exist here. Like, focusing and highlighting the people that are already doing art here is a way to market the arts programs here. And so a good starting and leaping point for us.
Thank you. I think we have one more group. Yes, in the back, on the right.
I'm also not a talker. We kind of hit on some of the same stuff. Talking about like what really are the next steps for implementation, because we're talking about the priorities. Most of us kind of know what the priorities are. So what is the next step toward figuring out what we're going to do about that? And then kind of wanting to see more about what other cities have done successfully. I know that like the study looked at a whole bunch of other cities and even cities in the surrounding area or cities outside of the state that might be similar sized. How have they done it well or not well that we could kind of work off of? We also talked again about like what do the corporations think? What are ways that we could get into getting the corporations to do sponsorships and things like that? And then that need that we've talked about several times about like having a centralized calendar of events and things like that was mostly what we touched on there.
Anything else from that group? We got the highlights. Thank you. So all of those ideas sound eminently sensible. And just as an older guy who's been doing cultural planning for a long time, we take it as a very positive sign that you want to know how. What do we do next? What's the implementation plan? That's the best question that we can get. We don't want to jump ahead when we do this first draft of the plan to say what the implementation plan is until we get a read from the community, but we absolutely will include a section of starting points, potential starting points for the first couple of years at least. And then as a practical matter, some implementation will be done by staff as a part of their annual work planning and budget planning in years to come. But we love the idea of putting together an initial implementation plan. And we also, and Steve had talked about this with us earlier today at the advisory group, want to consider the idea of an implementation committee of some kind, a community implementation committee. So let us move to our last slide for you, which goes to next steps. We wanted to just share with you what happens now in the planning process. You and anyone else that you encourage to provide feedback can do so through March 21st, so another 3 weeks or so, through Plano Arts at Plano.gov or through the website. And we really do encourage community feedback. It's very helpful to us to find out what resonates with people and if there's anything missing. And you've answered both of those questions in various ways tonight. So we will digest the community feedback. We will make changes to the plan. And we are now thinking about going to City Council for a presentation of the draft plan for their review on April 14th. It's not set in stone yet, but that's the tentative date. And remember earlier when I said at the end of the meeting we'd exhort you to advocate for the plan adoption, that would be the time to show up and express your support, do community, make public comment, and encourage, others from the community, whether they're part of the arts community or just an avid attendee. Those are the that's the kind of political expression of support that makes it easier for council members to not only adopt the plan, but to fund it. I think that's it. Martin or Linda?
Yeah, just a couple quick points. I just want to point out that are all of you aware of the city website where the web page that has the draft plan on it? I see some heads nodding. If not, Michelle, I'm just looking just to make sure we have the correct web address.
engageplano.com/art, something like that.
Okay, so just Google it. Ask your AI agent, say, how do I find the... But, and there's also a link there to that email to give feedback. In addition, I believe on that website is all of the appendix of the research that we talked about. So if you really want to cuddle up with a good glass of wine and read hundreds of pages of research, you can spend a quality night really going through it. And it's wonky, but some of you actually may be interested. The market research is there, the study, all the data is there. Some of you are asking for some of the breakouts of the data. So there is a lot of information there if you're interested.
Yes.
I just have a quick question. I know how I got this information because I'm part of the art fair. Are y'all sending it out, and how are they getting it to people in the community so they can review the plan? How does the average person get the info?
We put it in the Plano City newsletter. We've advertised it on the Downtown Plano Arts pages, the social media pages, Plano Arts and Events, and City of Plano has put it out too. So it depends on how you look at it, because they updated it the same day I sent out the next day, and so they're all attached to the plan. It's like 155 gigs. Yeah, so go look at the link again. It's all there. Well.
And thank you for the question. It's a great question. And we will encourage the city communications team to continue pushing it out.
And you all can share it as well. We share it with people in the arts, not in the arts. We want to hear from the whole community, so please share it.
So, for the good of the order, seeing no further comments, thank you so much for turning out tonight and for participating in this dialogue.
And that's it for our Inside Plano. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did doing it.
If you have any comments or suggestions, send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. Bye!
Talk to you next month. The Inside Plano podcast is brought to you by the City of Plano.